Okay, so have you ever heard of a trial where the defendant couldn't even speak for themselves because they were already dead?
Oh, wow.
That's what we're diving into today.
Okay.
A bizarre episode from history known as the Cadaver Synod,
Yeah.
which took place way back in 897 AD.
It might sound like something straight out of like a horror movie or something.
Right.
But this event actually tells us a lot about the power struggles within the medieval church.
So set the scene for us.
Okay.
We're in Rome, a city that's seen its share turmoil.
Yeah.
And we're in the Basilica of St. John Lateran.
Right.
What exactly has happened?
Okay, so imagine this. The basilica is packed, but instead of the usual solemnity, there's this palpable tension in the air. Pope Stephen VI is presiding, but across from him, instead of a living, breathing person, sits a rotting corpse.
What?
Propped up on a throne.
Oh my gosh.
And this corpse is Pope Formosus, Stephen's predecessor.
Okay.
And he's about to be put on trial.
A corpse on trial. That's definitely not something you see every day.
No, it's not.
So who was this Pope Formosus, and why was he subjected to such a strange posthumous trial?
Well, Formosus had a rather remarkable career.
Okay.
He started as a missionary spreading Christianity in Bulgaria,
Oh.
then served as a papal diplomat navigating the complex world of Frankish politics,
Okay.
and then ultimately he ascended to the papacy.
Okay.
But his election was shrouded in controversy.
Mm-hmm.
He made some powerful enemies along the way, including, as you might have guessed, Stephen VI.
Ah, so this wasn't just some random act of desecration.
Right.
There was bad blood between these two even before Formosus died.
Exactly. Stephen felt deeply cheated out of the papacy, believing it was rightfully his.
Yeah.
And this resentment festered while Formosus was alive,
Yeah.
and shockingly boiled over after his death.
So it sounds like personal revenge was a major motivator.
Yeah.
But were there any other reasons, perhaps political ones, behind Stephen's decision to put a dead man on trial?
Yeah, there were definitely political undercurrents at play. Formosus had crowned a rival, Arnold of Carinthia, as Holy Roman Emperor,
All right.
which angered the powerful Sepulto dynasty, who sought to control the papacy.
Right.
Stephen was aligned with the Sepultos,
Mm.
so his actions could have been a way to reassert their influence and punish Formosus for defying them.
So we've got personal vendetta and a power struggle with a powerful dynasty.
Right.
So what exactly happened during this so-called Cadaver Synod?
Right.
Was it literally just a case of yelling at a corpse?
Well, there are accounts that describe a deacon being assigned to speak on behalf of the deceased pope.
Oh my goodness.
So imagine the scene, a decaying corpse dressed in papal robes, accusations being hurled at it,
Wow.
and this deacon awkwardly trying to defend a man who could no longer speak for himself.
That's both bizarre and a little bit sad.
Yeah.
What were the charges against Formosus? What made him so reprehensible in Stephen's eyes?
Well, Stephen revived old accusations, claiming that Formosus had illegally sought the papacy and had abandoned his previous bishopric in Rome. Basically, he was trying to delegitimize Formosus's entire papacy and invalidate all the decisions he had made.
It seems like an extreme reaction, even for a time period known for its brutality.
It was.
You have to wonder, did this charade actually work?
Yeah.
Did people believe Stephen's accusations, considering the,
Right.
shall we say, unconventional nature of the trial?
Well, that's where things get interesting.
Okay.
As if divine intervention was at play, an earthquake interrupted the trial.
Oh, wow.
Then rumors began to spread about Formosus's body being miraculously recovered.
Okay.
Some say by fishermen, others whisper it was summoned by his own ghost.
What?
On top of that, people started attributing miracles to the dead pope.
Wait, miracles? Like what kind of miracles?
Stories circulated of the sick being cured, people speaking in tongues.
Wow.
All sorts of extraordinary events. It's as if Stephen's attempt to erase Formosus only amplified his presence in the public imagination.
That's a bit ironic, isn't it?
It is.
It seems like Stephen's actions had the opposite of the intended effect.
Right.
He was trying to discredit Formosus, but instead he might have inadvertently turned him into a martyr.
Yeah, it's crucial to remember the significance of relics in the medieval church.
Right.
Relics were believed to hold immense power. They could perform miracles, attract pilgrims, bolster the church's authority.
Right.
By desecrating Formosus's body, Stephen was trying to prevent him from becoming a venerated saint to destroy his spiritual legacy.
It's fascinating how deeply intertwined power, religion, and even superstitions were back then.
It is.
So we've got a vengeful pope, a politically motivated trial, a miraculously recovered corpse, and rumors of miracles.
Right.
What happened next in this saga? Did Stephen achieve his goal of erasing Formosus from history?
Well, you could say that Stephen's plan backfired spectacularly.
Oh.
Not only did his attempt to discredit Formosus fail,
Right.
it also led to his own downfall.
Oh, tell me more about that.
Let's just say it didn't end well for him.
Okay.
He was deposed, imprisoned, and eventually strangled.
Oh, my God.
His successor, Pope Theodore II, overturned the Cadaver Synod's decisions and gave Formosus a proper reburial, restoring his honor.
Wow. Talk about a dramatic turn of events.
Yeah.
But this whole episode with the Cadaver Synod raises some interesting questions.
Yeah.
Was this really just about personal revenge and power struggles, or was there a deeper meaning behind it?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it's one that historians are still debating today.
Well, I, for one, am eager to delve deeper into this fascinating story
Yeah.
and see what other insights we can uncover.
Of course.
You know, this obsession with controlling a rival's legacy even after their death
Yeah.
wasn't unique to Stephen VI.
Mm-hmm.
About a century later, we see a similar pattern with Pope Paschal II.
Right.
What can you tell us about that?
It's true. The medieval papacy was constantly caught in a tug of war
Right.
between spiritual authority and earthly power.
Yeah.
In Pascal's case, he was dealing with a rival pope named Clement III.
Okay, back up for a second. A rival pope. How does that even work?
Yeah.
Was there some kind of papal election gone wrong?
Think of it as a major disagreement within the church escalating to a full-blown schism.
Oh, wow.
In those days, the Holy Roman Emperor and the Pope were clashing over who got to appoint bishops.
Okay.
This caused a huge rift, with some supporting the emperor's choice, Clement III,
Right.
and others remaining loyal to Pascal, the Pope in Rome.
So you have two figures claiming to be the true pope, each with their own supporters.
Exactly.
That must have created quite a chaotic situation.
Yeah.
What ultimately happened to Clement III?
Right.
Did he eventually give up his claim to the papacy?
He actually died of natural causes.
Oh, okay.
But his supporters, convinced of his holiness, began promoting his sainthood almost immediately.
Okay.
They even compiled stories of miracles happening at his tomb.
It sounds like a classic power move, trying to legitimize their chosen pope, even after his death.
It was.
I bet Pascal wasn't too happy about this burgeoning saint undermining his authority.
You're absolutely right. Pascal saw this as a direct threat to his own legitimacy. And his reaction. He ordered Clement's body exhumed and thrown into the Tiber River.
Oh, that's a pretty drastic measure. It seems history does have a way of repeating itself.
It does.
But if this kind of thing happened more than once, why is the Cadaver Synod with Stephen VI and Formosus so much more infamous?
Well, I think Stephen's actions were uniquely theatrical and frankly over the top.
Yeah.
The whole spectacle of the trial, the deacons speaking for the corpse,
Yeah.
the earthquake interrupting the proceedings, it all contributed to a sense of the bizarre and macabre.
Right.
Plus, his attempt to erase Formosus backfired completely, turning the dead pope into a sympathetic figure and fueling those rumors of miracles.
So it's not just the act of putting a dead pope on trial,
Right.
but the way Stephen went about it that makes the Cadaver Synod so memorable.
Right.
It's almost like the difference between a calculated political maneuver
Mm-hmm.
and a messy public meltdown.
Precisely. And it highlights the complex relationship between power religion and public perception. Stephen underestimated the power of symbolism and inadvertently created a martyr.
All of this makes me wonder, what were the long-term consequences of the Cadaver Synod?
Right.
Did it achieve what Stephen VI intended, or did it ultimately have the opposite effect?
That's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Stephen's actions didn't just affect the immediate political landscape.
Right.
They also had ripple effects that impacted the papacy for years to come.
Oh, I'm all ears. What were some of the long-term consequences that followed the Cadaver Synod?
Well, for one, it further eroded the already fragile relationship between the papacy and the Holy Roman Empire.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
After all, the emperors supported Formosus.
Exactly.
So seeing him subjected to such a humiliating trial wouldn't have gone over well.
Exactly. It deepened the mistrust and contributed to ongoing conflicts over power and authority.
Right.
The Cadaver Synod also cast a long shadow over the papacy itself. People began to question the legitimacy and stability of the institution, particularly when its leaders were resorting to such extreme and arguably unchristian behavior.
It's hard to imagine a trial like that inspiring much faith or confidence in the church.
It wasn't.
Did the public ever really buy into Stephen's accusations against Formosus?
No, Stephen's attempt to discredit Formosus ultimately failed.
Oh, yeah.
The rumors of miracles, the dramatic earthquake interrupting the trial,
Yeah.
the public's sympathy for the desecrated corpse, all of these factors contributed to a growing perception that Formosus was a victim of injustice.
It sounds like Stephen's actions had the opposite effect of what he intended.
They did.
Instead of erasing Formosus from history, he inadvertently made him a more significant figure.
Yeah, you could say that.
Yeah.
And it speaks to a larger theme we see throughout history, where attempts to control narratives, especially through censorship or repression, often backfire.
It makes you think about how fragile reputations and legacies can be, and how even the most powerful individuals can lose control of their own narratives.
All right.
So while the Cadaver Synod might seem like a bizarre and isolated incident,
Yeah.
it actually raises some profound questions about the nature of power, the limits of control, and the unintended consequences of our actions.
Absolutely. It also sheds light on the deep-seated anxieties of the time.
Anxieties. What do you mean by that?
Well, remember, this was a period marked by instability, invasions, and natural disasters.
Right.
People were grappling with questions of mortality, the afterlife, and the power of the church to offer salvation.
So the Cadaver Synod wasn't just about political maneuvering or personal vendettas.
Right.
It was also a reflection of deeper societal fears and anxieties.
Exactly. And it highlights how those anxieties can be exploited and manipulated, particularly in times of uncertainty.
Right.
Stephen VI tapped into those anxieties, but in doing so, he inadvertently unleashed forces that he couldn't control.
This has been an incredibly insightful dive into a truly bizarre chapter of history.
It is.
But before we wrap things up, there's one question that keeps nagging at me. You mentioned earlier that the Cadaver Synod wasn't an isolated incident.
That's right. While the Cadaver Synod might be the most infamous example,
Yeah.
there were other instances of popes taking extreme measures to deal with their rivals even after death.
Really? Okay, now I have to hear this. What other papal power struggles extended beyond the grave?
Well, one that comes to mind is the story of Pope Boniface VIII and his conflict with Philip IV of France.
Okay, another papal rivalry. So what happened there? Did Boniface also get put on trial after his death?
Not quite, but it was a close call. Boniface and Philip clashed over the issue of taxation of the clergy.
Money. Always a source of conflict.
Exactly. Philip wanted to tax the church to fund his wars, but Boniface vehemently opposed it.
Yeah, I bet the church wasn't too keen on giving up its wealth.
Right. They saw it as an infringement on their autonomy and authority. Things escalated quickly, with Philip sending his agents to arrest Boniface.
Wow, talk about disrespecting the Pope.
It was a humiliating incident for Boniface. He was actually held captive for a few days before being released.
So what happened next? Did Boniface retaliate?
He died shortly after the incident, but the conflict didn't end there.
Okay, I'm sensing a pattern here. So how did Philip try to control Boniface's legacy after his death?
Well, Philip wanted to make sure that Boniface's papacy was completely discredited.
Yeah.
He even tried to get Boniface put on trial posthumously.
Another posthumous trial. These medieval popes were really into that, weren't they?
It seems so. But in Boniface's case, the trial never actually happened.
So Philip failed to erase Boniface from history.
Not entirely. Philip's campaign of propaganda did damage Boniface's reputation.
Okay.
But ultimately, he's still remembered as a significant figure in papal history.
It seems like trying to control someone's legacy after their death is a risky gamble. It often backfires, doesn't it?
It does. It highlights the limits of power and the enduring nature of historical narratives.
So we've seen how popes like Stephen VI and Pascal II used extreme measures to deal with their rivals even after death. But the case of Boniface VIII shows that even kings and emperors tried to manipulate history to their advantage.
Exactly. The struggle for power and control extended beyond the grave.
And these stories remind us that history is not just a collection of facts.
Right.
It's also a battleground for competing narratives and interpretations.
Absolutely. The victors often get to write the history books, but as we've seen, sometimes the losers get the last laugh.
All of this makes me wonder, what were the long-term consequences of these papal power struggles?
Yeah.
How did they shape the church and its relationship with secular rulers?
Well, for one, they contributed to the decline of papal authority.
Okay.
When popes were seen as engaging in petty squabbles and power grabs,
Right.
it undermined their moral authority and weakened their influence.
Makes sense. So the church's reputation took a hit because of these conflicts.
It did. And it also created an environment of instability and uncertainty, which made it difficult for the church to effectively govern and provide spiritual guidance.
So these power struggles had a lasting impact on the church's ability to function as a cohesive institution.
They did. And it also had implications for the relationship between the church and secular rulers.
Okay. In what way?
The conflicts emboldened secular rulers like Philip IV of France to challenge papal authority and assert their own power.
So it was a power shift from the church to the state.
It was a gradual shift, but these papal power struggles certainly played a role.
It's fascinating how these seemingly isolated incidents had such far-reaching consequences.
It is. It shows how history is interconnected and how even the smallest actions can have ripple effects.
This deep dive has been a real eye-opener.
It has.
We've seen how the pursuit of power and control can lead to some truly bizarre and disturbing behavior.
Yeah,
And how these actions can have unintended consequences that shape the course of history.
absolutely. The Cadaver Synod and other similar episodes serve as cautionary tales, reminding us that even the most powerful individuals are not above the law or the judgment of history. It's like we've uncovered this hidden world of like papal drama and intrigue.
It is, and it makes you wonder if there are any other instances where popes went to extreme lengths to deal with their opponents.
Oh, there are a few other examples that come to mind.
Really? Okay, spill the beans. What else happened?
Well, there's the story of Pope John XII, who was accused of all sorts of scandalous behavior.
Okay, like what?
Oh, things like simony, adultery, even murder.
Wow, that's quite a rap sheet for a pope.
It is. He was eventually deposed by a Roman council, but he didn't go down without a fight.
Oh, so what did he do?
He gathered an army and tried to retake Rome.
A papal army. That's not something you hear about every day.
It's not. But his attempt failed, and he died under mysterious circumstances shortly after.
Okay, so maybe not a direct attack on his legacy after death, but still a pretty dramatic story.
Oh, absolutely. And then there's the case of Pope Benedict IX.
Okay, another one with a scandalous reputation.
You could say that he was actually elected Pope 3 times.
3 times? How did that happen?
Well, he was young and ambitious, and he came from a powerful family.
Okay, so he had the connections.
He did. But he was also known for his corrupt practices and his dissolute lifestyle.
So not exactly a model pope.
Not really. In fact, he eventually resigned the papacy in exchange for a large sum of money.
What? So he basically sold the papacy.
Pretty much. But that wasn't the end of it. He later tried to reclaim the papacy not once, but twice.
Wow, this guy wouldn't give up. So what ultimately happened to him?
Well, his attempts to regain the papacy failed, and he
Right.
eventually retired to a monastery.
A monastery. That's quite a change of pace for a pope who sold his office.
It is. But it shows that even the most ambitious and power-hungry individuals can sometimes find redemption.
So we've got these popes clashing with emperors and kings, fighting amongst themselves, and even resorting to posthumous trials to settle scores.
It's a wild ride through papal history, isn't it?
It is. But amidst all the drama and intrigue, I think there's a valuable lesson to be learned.
Oh, what's that?
That power is a fickle thing. It can be gained and lost in an instant. And those who wield it should always be mindful of the consequences of their actions.
Absolutely. These stories from history serve as cautionary tales, reminding us that even the most powerful individuals are not immune to the temptations of greed, ambition, and revenge.
It's a reminder that human nature is a constant throughout history, and that the pursuit of power can often lead to darkness.
And it's also a testament to the enduring power of storytelling. These events might have happened centuries ago, but they still resonate with us today.
Right, because they speak to our own fascination with power struggles, scandals, and the human condition.
Exactly. And they remind us that history is not just a collection of dusty old facts. It's a living, breathing narrative that continues to shape our understanding of the world.
Well, folks, that's it for this deep dive into the dark side of papal history. We hope you found it as fascinating and thought-provoking as we did.
I certainly did.
And remember, history is full of surprises. So keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep those minds engaged. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the most intriguing stories from history. We'll keep digging up the past, guaranteed to make you think, and maybe even give you a few chills along the way.